Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Colledge. Welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. So let me paint you a picture. You've got a star in your team. Let's call them a rock star. They shine, they deliver, they're reliable. They're your go-to when things get tough or when visibility is on the line. We've all leaned on someone like that. And maybe like me, you've been that person yourself as well. In this episode, I'm going to talk about why primarily relying on individuals is not the way to build your team into the highest performing version of itself. Now, before we get any further, let me be very clear that this episode is not about tearing anyone down. It's not about bashing rock stars who contribute immense value to your team. But this episode is about the risks of building your whole show around a lone rock star, which is when things get rocky. A terrible joke, I know, but I couldn't resist. So let's talk about the rock star. So as I said, they're likely your go-to. They always do good work. They never seem to drop the ball. They get results, and they're first in line for high stakes, high profile work. And McKinsey calls this small group of rare individuals thriving stars. It's about 4% of a typical workforce. Now, I want to emphasize the use of the word thriving in the label, because not only are these people individually productive, they also have incredible potential to lift others up as well. They radiate positivity and energy and commitment, and they help to create a psychologically safe environment, which is the foundation of so much of your success. They can be really, really incredible for your team. Now, all this sounds great, I know. So why on earth am I recording an episode about the risks of over-reliance on them? Well, the reason is that when we overly depend on individual brilliance, we overlook or we devalue the collective, the team collective. When we reward individual brilliance at the expense of collective performance, we limit potential and we limit the growth of other team members, and we also limit the results of that team. So at this point, let me share a personal anecdote. Now, I mentioned that I have worked as a rock star. At that time I was doing great work. I was doing great work that nobody in the world had ever done before. I was flying. I absolutely loved it. And in the middle of all of that, almost 20 years ago, I remember a leader whom I respect greatly saying to me, "Lisa, you're running fast, and that's great for setting up this venture. But if you don't bring people with you, one day you'll look around and you'll be alone." And I didn't really understand that comment then, but it stuck with me. Maybe because deep down I knew that they were right, even if I didn't understand at that time why they were right. So let's move on to consider why. Why did that leader tell me that I needed to learn how to bring people with me? Well, the reason is summarized really well in a McKinsey article written by Aaron de Smet and his colleagues, who say at most companies, teams generate value as a primary unit of performance. That's my emphasis on the teams. Now, I wonder how many people would disagree with that. Probably not many, perhaps not any. I think most companies and leaders would agree that teams drive value, but most of us still lead as if the individual hero is the answer. We always prioritize individual performance over collective strength, or almost always. Now, sports analogies work really well here. So the classic relay running analogy holds very well. You can have the fastest runners in the world in your relay team, but if they don't practice together, so they're able to pass the baton to each other cleanly, then the team fails. So what happens if you have an over-reliance on individual rock stars rather than your team as a whole? First of all, your rock stars are at significant risk of burning out. They're so strong that they're asked to participate in too many things, and because they enjoy the work, they tend to say yes. Second, you're so heavily reliant on your rock stars that if they do burn out or they leave because they're promoted or headhunted or whatever, it's difficult for your team to replace their inputs. So your team is fragile. It's not resilient. I'll just sidestep to share a related anecdote. Now, when I partnered with academic leaders, the most forward-looking of them tracked their funding resilience. Right? Some had really impressive external grant profiles, but when you look closer, they hinged on a single primary investigator or one massive grant, and without that, the whole thing crumbled. So the point is, you can't build long-term value on a single point of brilliance. And third, McKinsey's engagement research shows that if you design your system to serve only a few thriving stars, you alienate everybody else, because opportunities to develop and the recognition isn't evenly available to everybody. So when one person's brilliance overshadows others, the rest of the team feels unseen and disconnected from your mission. They check out, they disengage, and this is a massive problem globally across all industries and across all sizes of companies. Gallup regularly publishes insights from a very long-running study on employee engagement, and they reported in 2024 that 77% of employees globally are not engaged with their organization's mission. That means that they don't feel seen, don't feel valued. And this is not a one-year blip. It's consistent, and it's gradually worsening over time. This 77% is doing the bare minimum, and if you're lucky, they're doing it quietly. And if you're unlucky, they're vocal about it. Now, McKinsey refers to these actively, vocally disengaged employees as productivity and energy vampires, because their behavior drags others down with them. But just as you know who your rock stars are, your thriving stars, you also almost certainly know who your productivity and energy vampires are. But this number, 77% disengaged, it already sounds shocking enough, but it's a global average, and it's hiding some even more shocking statistics for some regions. For example, in Europe, 87% of employees are disengaged from their organization's mission. So, and fourth and finally, the consequence of over-reliance on individuals is related to the fact that even the work of a rock star is improved by contributions of others. So let me build on that personal anecdote about the importance of bringing people with me that I shared a while ago. So I quickly found out that while I might have had the vision and the credibility to engage with influencers in the field and other things that were difficult to replace, I definitely couldn't do what others could do. They may have been reflecting concepts back or asking questions which helped us to strengthen the concepts and communicate them in a way that a much wider audience was able to understand. So the quality of the work was good when I was doing it on my own, but it increased even more with other people contributing to it, and it was more impactful because we communicated it better, and it accelerated growth, and it was fun. So to summarize, when you focus on the few and not the whole team, you increase the chance of burnout for those few. The team's not resilient. You encourage disengagement of the majority of employees who are steady contributors, and eventually your rock stars will also disengage because they'll feel obliged to compensate when others check out. And finally, the overall quality of work and growth is also damaged. So what's the alternative? Let me give you an example. So in a large department I worked in, we would get special projects coming along, you know, the type. They're cross-functional, they're high visibility, they're important enough to ask people to spend time away from their core roles. And when I used to ask the leadership team for nominations of people to participate, they tended to mention always the same high performers. And it's not only because they were good and reliable, but also because they were familiar. It was a habit. Now, it wasn't badly intentioned. My peers were suggesting rock stars to help these projects be successful. But this was part of a journey that we were on to build out of a toxic working culture. And we realized that this thinking, this reliance on the same people, the same rock stars, that behavior was really limiting our turnaround, our growth out of the toxic culture. So we decided to try something different. And instead, I put out informal calls to the team. And I would say, like, here's a project, here's what I think the time commitment is going to be, here are the skills that we need, here are the skills that you can learn. I don't care what your job title is. I don't care whether it looks relevant on paper. I also don't care about your seniority. What I do care about is your potential to contribute. So if your manager supports it and it fits with your development goals, let's talk. And the people who came forward when we tried that were almost never those who the leadership team would have asked or who would even have thought of in this way. And the people who put up their hands were people with really different perspectives than we expected. And they saw angles that I hadn't considered. They connected dots that I didn't even know existed or needed connecting. So was it comfortable for me? Honestly, no, not at first. But what we got was brilliant. We got different ways of seeing the problem. We got different types of intelligence and insights coming in to help make decisions. We got different questions than we'd expected, different ideas about how to execute things. It wasn't better necessarily, it was richer. And my role of helping the team to piece things together into a coherent whole and to keep on track, and so on, that role eventually became easier because I was a bit distant from the detailed knowledge, and so I could focus more on what I was uniquely bringing to the team. And it was really fun to be learning so much and working with people who you'd never worked with before. So the outcome was the outcome that we wanted. The outcome was there. It was just delivered in a different way than I would have done myself, but it was delivered. And now think about the wider impact. So the rock stars, they weren't placed under pressure. They were protected from burnout. They got to carry on shining without carrying the entire load and all the expectations for everybody. And others had the opportunity to shine and to learn something new and to work with different people. Those people engaged more strongly with the mission as a result of being able to work on that project, which is exactly what you want for your team to keep growing. And the team and the business outcomes as a whole, they were more sustainable. Think about it. The knowledge, the experience, the connections that we were building are spread across a wider base and not only associated with a few rock stars. We're not relying too much on one or a few people anymore. Of course, we want those one or few people to stay, but if they do leave, we are much more confident that we can continue to grow as a team. We are resilient, and that's how you scale leadership and talent and innovation. So what I've just described is neuro-inclusive team design. We recognize that people have got different styles, different skills, different ways of interpreting evidence, different ways of responding to the same goal. These are different neuro styles, different ways of thinking. But regardless of those different ways, everyone can contribute value. Now, some team members might have labels like ADHD or autism or introversion or trauma. And some of these labels might be out there and known in the team, and some of them might not be. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the labels are, and it doesn't matter whether they are known. The point is that by basing our team design on neurodiversity inclusion, everyone is motivated to contribute their best. And when a forward-looking leader like you connects it all, we can outpace, outperform, and outlast our competition. So it's the connections in teams which are the key. And in these teams, people are valued not only for their work, but also how they work with others. When you design and you build for that variation, everybody benefits, including your rock stars. And I think that that's implicit in the label that McKinsey uses for rock stars, the label thriving stars. The value is the greatest when they elevate others, not just themselves. So neuro-inspired teams are not about empowering or accommodating a few. They're about unlocking the full capacity of the whole. So if you're a leader, here's the key takeaway. Reward outcomes, yes, of course, reward outcomes, but also you need to reward how those outcomes are achieved, through collaboration, through respect, and through contribution to team health. It can't be one person at the expense of the others. It has to be people succeeding because of others, with others. Now, if your system turns a blind eye to rock stars and allows them to sidestep team values, you're signaling that you don't really value each team member, and you'll lose trust, you'll lose engagement, and eventually you'll lose the very stars that you're trying so hard to keep. So instead, reward those who bring others with them as they rise. So, are rock stars a problem? Not inherently. No, it's fantastic if you've got rock stars in your team, because they stretch everyone and they raise the bar and they can help to create a wonderful working culture, but they're only a small part of the story. And if you've lost the balance and built your entire team culture around them, or the rock star acts as though they think the team should be built around them, then it's a problem, because the rock star without a band is a solo act, and solo acts don't build future-ready organizations. So if you'd like to know more about how you can design neuro-inspired teams, whether you're starting from scratch or recalibrating an existing team, then head to my website, lisacolledgeconsulting.com, and have a look at what I'm offering. If you'd like me to keep you up to date with what I'm up to and what's available to you, then sign up for my newsletter, or feel free to connect directly with me via LinkedIn or email. Thanks for listening.